Hey everybody, this is Jay Bake here with the Jersey Devils Brocast, coming at you with a YouTube shorty here on draft weekend, on a weekend that got some heightened emotions from the Devils fan base. Oh my goodness. Going through those comments on the Instagram pages, on the Facebook groups especially, which I think with hockey fans, it's like we're a very Facebook-oriented fan base. Like a lot of Facebook comments and fan groups and a lot of action, a lot of insults getting thrown between fans, some directed at me, some not. I'm just a fan that loves commenting and talking hockey, and I've been accused of all kinds of things in the last week, and I don't think I'm the only guy with a podcast that has, too. Sam Wu is one of the best Devils podcasts out there. I saw he was getting some nonsense from people, too. That's just the way it is, I guess. But a fairly emotional time of year. I love the NHL offseason. I like the offseason period. I'm one of those nerdy hockey fans that I like going on Puckpedia. Used to be, cap friendly before the NHL shut her down, and doing armchair GM and making some moves. And, if you can move this guy and this salary, then that opens it up for this guy, and have a bit of a better understanding of building rosters and players and no movement clauses and where things stand. It's an exciting time of year. Also, the winning the offseason. That's like the only competition right now. There's no hockey to be played. It's all about winning the offseason and looking at Ranger fans and saying, look at what we got and look at what you don't have. Though keep in mind, I remember as a kid, especially early 2000s, Rangers fans won almost every offseason, and then they lost hard in the regular season and never even made the playoffs while we were winning cups. So buyer beware sometimes. But the NHL draft is over, and the Devils did not make any significant earth-shattering or transformative roster moves that many of us had hoped for. And I'm one of many I'm disappointed the Devils were not able to leverage that first-round pick with the other picks they acquired to put together a great package to get a player who could immediately help them. I've been tracking the Jason Robertson rumors because I think he'd be a great addition for this team. I think that's the kind of bold move this Devils team could use, a 6'3", just fantastic two-way forward who might be arguably the best forward on this team if they acquire him. And I really wanted to record a show at the end of draft weekend going over all the exciting new players and the fits in the lineup and who the Devils got and how their top six is going to look and a new goalie maybe, all of those things. And frankly, it's been a while since the organization has made a move like that, probably since the Timo Meier trade. I know the trade for Markstrom was kind of a big one, but Meier was like that, oh my goodness, look at what the Devils just did kind of trade, that it feels like it's been a while since we've done that. And I know the frustration by the fans is not necessarily just at Sonny Maeda. He's only been here for 2 months and has had 3 weeks of a real offseason. But it's like we've been waiting for this team to ascend into the contender category for a while now. We had a lot of hopes and expectations after that great season in 2023. And for years before that, we were told to be patient and trust the process. I understand why that gets very old after a while. And how many times can you hear that before you just, I can't hear this shit anymore. I want to win now. I want to go into next season and feel like the playoffs are a layup. It's a matter of how far we're going to go. I miss those days. That's what I grew up with. I was lucky enough to become a Devils fan mid-95 season. I was only 5 years old. I actually remember the first game I watched, Devils and Nordiques with my dad. Devils lost. That was when the Devils were still trying to get their act together that season after losing to the Rangers. Remember my dad was very disappointed and not very hopeful about what was about to happen, but I fell in love with the game. I remember watching the last 2 games of that season. I think it was Nordiques and Sabres, and the excitement going into the playoffs and watching that run. I just fell in love with hockey and this team. The Devils' disappointments back in the day was, 96 sucked, and I was actually at that game against the Senators, last game of the season. It was near tears. I was only 7 years old, 6, 7, so come on. I don't cry like that anymore. But, back in the day, it was, they lose in the first or second round. It was a disaster. It was pretty much that way from 94 through 2012. That's what I grew up with all the way through elementary school, middle school, high school, and through the end of college. I graduated in 2012 from William Patterson University, And the Devils made the Stanley Cup Finals that year. Like, that's what I grew up with. It's been tough. It's been tough sledding. This frustration, I don't think, is just at Sonny Maeda. I think it's at the franchise as a whole, that since 2012, it has been one bad year after another, or it has just been one disappointment after another. For the most part, it seems like most of the players we've brought in have not played to the level we were hoping for. So I get it. I get why this gets old after a while. And how many times can you hear trust the process before you just go like, I don't trust any process anymore. I'm sick and tired of this. But it is really early in the offseason, folks. Some of you need to do some breathing exercises. Have a drink. Have a nice Brooklyn summer ale. That's my favorite. Go work out. Go for a run. Go on vacation. Put your phone down. I don't know, something. But some of you need to chill out. Like, did you really think in 3 weeks Sonny Maeda was going to come in and, like, fundamentally change the organization? Look at all the no trades and no movement clauses. I mean, look at what's going on around the league right now. Look at some of the price tags for some of these players, which I feel like if Sonny Maeda paid that price of the equivalent for those players, those same fans that are freaking out would still be freaking out. It'd be, I can't believe they moved Mercer and 2 firsts for this effing guy. It's like, yeah, but that's the cost of doing business right now. You want a really good top 6 forward, you're going to have to part with some precious items in your toolbox. It's not going to be, we're going to fool them with our verbal judo and trade our 4th-round pick for Jordan Kyrou. Like, no, you're going to have to move a Connor McMichael plus. Alex Tuck, that's a big contract for a guy that is a nice player. He's not a franchise guy. He's a great player. Would have loved him on the Devils. Big price tag for essentially just a top 6 winger. Almost as much as what Jason Robertson wants, who's an elite-level franchise-changing player. And it's okay to be disappointed. I am right now, mildly disappointed on the disappointment scale of 1 being happy and 10 being ready to run into traffic. I'd say I'm like a 3 or a 4. I'm not happy. I'm just kind of in the middle. I'm waiting to see how this plays out. And it's okay to say, I wish they did X, Y, and Z, but there's still time to get it done, so I'm not freaking out yet. We got to see what happens. If the roster's the same at the end of July, I'll be very upset myself. I might even do a show where I'm yelling and screaming into the microphone, but we aren't there yet. I'm nowhere near that yet. That guy, and just as an example, I made a comment that I wish the Devils had let go of Keefe. And I've said this on the show. I've put this up on our social media. I think he's a great coach. I just think the Devils need a culture change. They need to turn the page, and they kind of need a day one of the new era of Devils hockey and to move on from Fitzgerald, move on from that old administration, move on of that way of doing things. And this is day one. This is something new. We're moving on. And I don't think you can do that with the same head coach. I just don't think that's possible. I think a lot of the examples of a general manager getting changed while keeping the head coach, it wasn't this fundamental organizational DNA change. It was more of we're kind of doing a little bit more of the same, but we're switching it up a little bit. Like, I think the Devils need that bit of a DNA change and to move on from Fitzgerald, which apparently is not negative enough on Fitzgerald for some of you. But I would have moved on from Keefe. And for many of you, that meant I was too negative on the Devils and I'm already giving up and whatever. I'm not. I'm just saying, like, I don't know. The Mets just fired their manager last week, and I'd been saying that since December. Like, to me, it's like the 2006, 7, and 8 Mets. Except 2006 was 24. Last year was 2007, and this is 2008. After 07, when they collapsed, they should have just moved on from Willie Randolph, turned the page. You have a big collapse. You got to move on. I felt with Mendoza last year, might not have been his fault, much like Willie, but the team completely collapsed in the second half. We're making all of these other changes. You got to just move on from Carlos and try and find somebody new to actually turn the page and start new in the next season. And then you just end up struggling. Nothing has really fundamentally changed, even though you changed the whole roster around, and we're in the same spot we were at the end of the year last year, but now we're firing the manager. And I'm afraid the Devils could be in the same position where they make a lot of decisions, they make a lot of trades, they move guys around, but it's still kind of the same day-to-day that they needed to really change, and we're just letting go of Keefe in December and not just getting it done now and starting new now. That's my fear of what could happen. Apparently, that means I'm too negative and I've already given up on the season. And like I said before, I'm not panicking right now because the Devils didn't make trades or make moves and do those things yet. I'm waiting to see. It's the beginning of the offseason. Apparently, that means I'm in love with the organization, and I just loved Fitzgerald, and I loved Maeda, and all these other personal attacks, which this one guy was going crazy last night. I was cracking up. It's a Saturday night. I'm up late watching some draft highlights, just watching baseball highlights, just hanging out. And I'm cracking up at all of the comments from this guy. It's just unbelievable. Like, the dude is... Some of you on the Devils fan forum, if you go and see the threads, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But either way, folks, you got to have some patience and calm down. I get the frustration over the last decade and a half, but, like, you got to settle down right now. That doesn't mean that Sonny Maeda should make irrational decisions. I'm about to get into some of the picks the Devils made, but it seems like the Devils had a decent draft. I think Prodman on Athletic gave the Devils only a C+. Some other people have given them a bit of a better grade. You know, James Nichols and Daniel Amoya did a pretty good job of summing things up on New Jersey Hockey Now. Great site to go see. Todd Cordell does a great job on Infernal Access covering a lot of that stuff as well. Very objective and fairly honest, especially Todd Cordell. And it was a decent draft for the Devils. Like, it wasn't a disaster weekend where it's, oh man, the Devils, they lost their first round. Like, 2014 was kind of a disaster draft, right? Like, they never forfeited that first round pick, and it got Stefan Matteau, which was a total waste. They should have just forfeited it. In 2014, they would have had a better pick. They had, like, the last pick in the draft. They got Quenneville, and nothing against him. He just didn't work out here. One of many first-round picks that didn't work out at the time. And, like, that's more of a disaster draft that kind of sets you back. Like, this is not the case. Like, this was an adequate draft for the Devils. So everyone just needs to settle down. Free agency is coming. Some of the biggest names on the board and the trade market are still on the board, and we just have to wait and see what happens. But moving on to the draft. I'm not a draft expert, not a prospect expert, not going to pretend to be. I think there's some fans out there that have done some great write-ups on the prospects that if you see them in the fan forums, David Chimes always does a great job. I don't always agree with him, but the guy has a lot of insight and backs everything up with statistics and some analytics and rational points of view. So certainly keep reading on all of that if you want to learn some more, but I will go through the top 3 picks for the Devils this year in the 2026 draft. At 12th overall, the pick that we all were hoping the Devils would be packaging to move for another player, the Devils got Andrew Command. And the comparison I keep seeing is of Nico and Dylan Larkin and Christian Dvorak and Anton Lundell. Of a really good two-way, 200-foot center, good skater, came on strong this year, looked like a bottom of the draft kind of guy if he was going to make it at the beginning of the year. And he came on and became for many, a first round pick, top end of the draft. Felt 12th might have been a bit of a reach. So there was some criticism on that. But at the same time, like, many of us were happy with Sonny Maeda because of his reputation of his reaches in drafts have worked out really well, like Jesper Bratt, who, he was pushing for the Devils to draft him earlier, and he's just lucky enough that he fell down into the draft, and the Devils got him in 6th round. And some other examples in Florida where Sonny Maeda and the staff were big on some guys and made some reaches and ended up working out. So this might be one of them, where it's a reach, and in 5-6 years we're going, thank God the Devils got him and passed up on players X, Y, and Z because he's turned into a really nice player. And the first round pick, too, I think we all view that as franchise, elite, explosive player. That's not always the case from year to year at 12th overall. Compare the picks, the top 15 picks from 2015 and then go to the next year to 16. 2003, go to the next year to 2004. It's not all the same. Some years they're stacked. You're going to get a franchise cornerstone in the teens. And some years you're looking for, all right, we got a lot of top 9 caliber guys, top 4 defensive men. It's just a matter of who we view as having the likelihood of reaching that. Seems like Andrew Command has a likelihood of being, at minimum, a number 3 center on a good team. Could be a number 2 center on a mediocre team. And if all things work out great, his ceiling, the max here, is a number 2 centerman with a great 200-foot game and like that Dylan Larkin, Nico kind of guy. But if he turns into an Anton Lundell, like a 40 to 50-point third-line center who wins a ton of faceoffs, competes hard, skates well, I mean, that's great. I mean, those are the guys that help win you championships. That's the John Madden type. Lundell played a huge role for the Panthers in winning cups and is going to play a big role for them going into next season. I'd love to have Lundell on my team right now. So we'll see what happens. I think Andrew Command sounds like a bit of a reach, but not the worst pick. Wasn't crazy or totally off the board. And it takes 3 to 5 years to really see how these guys work out, but seems the overall consensus. It was a solid pick by the Devils, a little bit of a reach, but Command looks like he should be a nice third-line center with a little bit of upside. Then the second round, Devils moved some picks around to acquire another second-round pick. Moved some picks around to get some other picks, and they got their guy. You know, that video was going around on Sunny Meta. Very excited to get Van Hanen, Matthias Van Hanen, 37th overall. The Devils had moved on from the 35th overall pick, picked up another pick out of moving that trade with that trade, and then they ended up getting their guy anyway. So they got their guy and picked up another pick later in the draft. Skilled player, Craig Button had him at 28th overall on his board. Overage player, he was passed over last year, but Button had him going in the first round. Devils got him at 37, so some value. Skilled winger, great skater. Stated that he idolized Jack Hughes growing up and could be a guy that maybe rounds out that top 6 with some more skill, which the Devils could really use. And it's these wingers, too, that Fitzgerald has missed on, like an Alexander Holtz as an example, that if they hit on those guys, a lot of our problems wouldn't be problems right now. It'd be a strength if Holtz had worked out and a few other guys along the way. Hopefully Gritzuk and Haminaho work out. But it's these guys in the second round. You get 1 or 2 of these guys to work out and hit their potential, which for him is a top 6 winger with some offensive upside, skilled player. That makes a big difference. So it seems like the Devils got some value there. A guy that was projected to go in the first round ended up going 37th overall. And then at 44th overall, they got the big Russian D-man. Now the Devils have a few of them in their system. Nikita Sherbakov. Raw skill set, but projects as a top 4 defenseman with some untapped offensive potential. Craig Button had him ranked 45th overall, so he went pretty much where many of the experts expected him to, somewhere between 40 and 50. Devils got him at 44th overall, so a sensible pick. Some untapped offensive abilities here. Seems like these big defensemen take some time. I mean, let's think the best of all time of those huge defensemen. Chris Pronger took a while. He's been very open about his struggles in Hartford before moving on to St. Louis and really getting traction and becoming the Hall of Famer that he became. Victor Hedman struggled his first few years in Tampa Bay before he really came on as one of the best defensemen in the game. And Chara, he struggled in the Island, though everybody did at the time with the Islanders, and really started to get some traction later on in his career with Ottawa to really become the guy he became in another Hall of Fame, ridiculously good stay-at-home, but also two-way ability, good scorer too once in a while, defenseman. So some of these big guys take some time. We're seeing that with Owen Power up in Buffalo right now. Have to have a little bit of patience with these guys for whatever reason, where Rasmus Dahlin, again, 2 completely different players and skill sets, has come on the scene pretty quickly, where Owen Power is taking a little bit more time. But Sherbakov seems to be a little bit more of that realm. Big defenseman, skates well, great reach, covers the zone very well, has some untapped offensive potential that as he continues his career in Russia, hopefully we'll see a little bit of that. The other thing, too, comparing the stat lines in Russia to here, you got to be careful with that. The league is completely different. Their style of play is different. Look at Nikita Gusev in Russia versus here as an example. You really don't know until these guys come over here. Like Anton Silyaev, we're not really going to know what we got until we see him in North American hockey, playing a North American game. That is very different. It's a little bit more north-south, and we see what this kid has. Great skill set, too. Now the Devils have 2 big Russian defensemen in their system, and we'll go from there. So, again, I'm not going to go into every single pick in the draft, but the Devils did get a few extra picks in this draft. Hopefully they have improved their farm system a little bit. I've been all about the immediate future and the short term here, but I will say you do have to think about the long term. And the Devils farm system is kind of subpar right now, which has held them back from maybe making some trades, right? The rumor with the Devils were all in on a Quinn Hughes trade, And it wasn't necessarily a salary cap issue. It was a trade package issue. The Devils could not match what Minnesota gave Vancouver. And now that might go down as the biggest mistake Fitzgerald made by not just giving Vancouver whatever they wanted for Quinn Hughes, right? To unite the Hughes brothers and have this great story and have one of the best defensemen in the game here who wanted to come here. I mean, that's like a 2-hour podcast in and of itself of how that was a failure. But you need those pieces and those tools in your tool set to make those trades. If you trade away every prospect and every pick, then you don't also have them to make trades to make your team better later on. You want your guys to work out and develop well and to exceed expectations, not just for what they can give your team, but for also what they can get you in a trade to make your team better now. That's what Vegas and Florida, they don't seem to hold on to a lot of their picks and prospects, but they seem to draft a lot of really good picks and prospects, and they move them for players to help them now. Carolina's done a lot of that too over the last few years in an attempt to win now. The Devils, Lou, back in the day, traded away a lot of prospects and players to make that team better right then and there. That when you have a lot of coveted prospects, that it's not just about can they work out for you while wearing your sweater. It's about whether they could work out for you too. Well, we can put 2 or 3 of these guys together. We can go get a top-line winger or go get a top 4 two-way defenseman. Or while the Devils are trying to deal with this goaltending situation, maybe you can afford to trade Markstrom for nothing and then package prospects and whatever else you have to go get a Connor Hellebuck or whoever else the Devils might be in on to improve the goaltending situation. You got to have the players to make those trades, right? Which is also, I know fans are very upset about the lack of a trade. Again, I'm disappointed, but I'm not like screaming yet. But you also have to ask yourself, does Sonny Maeda, outside of these future picks, do they really have the other players within the organization to put together to like make these trades work that we really want, to be competitive for Jason Robertson, to be competitive for if Detroit does move on from Dylan Larkin, which it sounds like Yzerman has said, unless he's overwhelmed by a trade, they're not moving him. So if you want Dylan Larkin, you're going to have to move some considerably good pieces, and do the Devils just have enough? And maybe that's a problem, and that's a problem you can't blame Sonny Maeda for yet. He didn't draft all these guys. He didn't build this farm system. You can blame him for that in 3-4 years. You can't blame him for that one now. But we'll see what happens. Have some patience, folks. We got to see how the offseason plays out. And if the roster is the same at the end of July, I promise you I will have a very angry podcast where I'll be yelling and screaming. Maybe I'll even refer to the names that I was called last night like a plebeian, which was hilarious. I was cracking up. That was hilarious. But either way. Let's go, Devils. I'll be back on Tuesday nights live on Radio Garden State. I hope you enjoyed this short YouTube video. Again, Jersey Devils Brocast, a show by a fan for fans. Check us out on Radio Garden State. Check out our Instagram, our Facebook page. Please like, subscribe, and comment on our video and everything else that we post up. Hopefully next year we'll be back at Prudential Center like we were last year for our 2 shows. We'll be working on that. Always tune into Radio Garden State, the best internet radio station in New Jersey. And I am Jay Bake, and I will see you guys soon. Enjoy the hot weather, everybody.